Hello there guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm very happy to be bringing you along with me once again through the creation of another ocean-inspired mermaid painting. And I'm sorry to say that once again I had to skip the filming of the sketching phase and we're going to be starting with the ink. But I will try, I think, next time to get the whole process on video. Now, as you can see, this piece is inspired by jellyfish, and our mermaid character is floating amongst them with her tail hanging down long, and I wanted the elongated shapes of all their tentacles and wrapping over her arms. And I just wanted the whole thing to be reasonably stylized and simple, what I thought was simple when I was sketching it, which is just the jellyfish and her and kind of the heavier weight of the image at the top, and then all of the long flowing tentacles and tail shapes down below. And another aspiration I had for this piece from the beginning was to have the whole thing quite sparkly and our mermaid to be somewhat bedazzled and pink and sort of glowy like the jellyfish around her. So I thought I would break out my purple ink for this painting. I think the colour is muted violet because it's underwater, and a lot of the jellyfish and underwater colours from this type of scene are very purpley pinky blue. However, I was really stuck on what I should be inking and what I should not be inking. The blue ocean background was going to be darker than the jellyfish in front, so that did make me hesitant to put any ink around the edges of the jellyfish. With elements that are so small and thin, such as the tentacles or tail and hair, putting dark ink right at the edge can just make the whole shape be lost and look too dark compared to the background. And there was also this thought that if I inked with a dark colour right on the edge of a jellyfish that is meant to be glowing, it would really lose that and make it look more factual and scientific rather than atmospheric, if that makes any sense. But I didn't really want to lose my shapes when I'm painting, and I am quite used to my ink lines, so I kind of went halfway between. I used a very diluted violet ink for the jellyfish in the background, and I think it worked out pretty decently as I went. Now, I spent a long time here looking at the piece, not knowing where to start with the paint. Let me just say that sketching Grace was a very different person than painting Grace. She had these big aspirations for putting many, many long, lanky tentacles and elements and doing things with the light and shadows and just biting off more than she really knew how to chew with watercolors. So I was looking at this not really sure if I should mask off these lighter front elements like all the pieces of the jellyfish, or if I should, like you see here, go through with my paintbrush in between all of the many tentacles and lay down my background like that. And you will see very soon me realize what a silly idea this was and go in with my masking fluid, but it just took a lot of time to mask off all the tentacles. But I've never really liked the idea of going in afterwards with a lot of white acrylic paint to bring out more white areas. I like to try and preserve the whiteness of the paper. So that really just left me with one option to mask off all the many areas, so I could actually lay down quite a few washes of the dark background without all this finicky work in between the tentacles. As far as my mermaid, I didn't really have a set idea going in on her colours. I knew I wanted her to be pink, sort of like the jellyfish, but I wasn't sure about her hair, light or dark. I had the feeling dark, but I didn't want to go in too suddenly because it would be hard to take it back. And so in a case like this where I didn't see any distinct look for the mermaid in my mind, I figure it out as I go, just taking things slowly and starting more with the background to see if something might come to me later on. But I was sure that her skin and tail should be a light translucent sort of pink, similar to the jellyfish. Now, I just wanted to point out the underwater shots you saw at the start of the video. I did take those myself last time I was snorkeling, and I was especially proud of the schooling fish and the cuttlefish shots. I think it's such a lovely thing to tie in with my underwater mermaidy painting videos. And I wish I could do more filming, but that camera that I've been using is not really working at the moment. Hopefully by the time summer rolls around again, I can get a new underwater camera and take more pretty shots like that. And that little jellyfish I filmed at the start, there were a whole lot of those there. This was actually my first time being stung. I got a couple stings. They're not poisonous or anything, but reasonably painful, not too bad. You just had to watch out for the big clouds of them because they can be very hard to see, and if you're not looking up and around you, you might miss them and run right into one. But it is very pretty to see how camouflaged and see-through they are in the water, so I tried to bring that a bit into my jellyfish in this painting, particularly the inner tentacles. I wanted to hint at that fading out near the bottom and that cloudy sort of transparency that they have. And you might notice that the tentacles are draped all over our mermaid, and I figured that could be kind of a nod to something like clownfish or other sea creatures that build up an immunity to getting stung. And you know, it's magic and all that. She's very at one with the nature of the water and the jellyfish. Now, I thought I was missing a bit of life from the water. We often have those sparkling particles that catch the light underwater, so I'm going in with little spots all around of my masking fluid. And once I darken the background and take them off later, they'll just be a lighter blue. Now, I must admit, I often look at past videos of my painting processes and I never really want to go back to it. I always love moving on and I feel energy for a new piece I haven't done, but I always look at all the strokes I've made and all the work it took to get to the end of a painting and think I would not want to go back and start that ever again. Particularly with this piece, it was so much work, way harder than I thought it would be, and just took a lot of small little strokes, adjustments here and there. It never really felt done. Days after I thought I'd be finished, I was still messing around with these blues in the background and how that affected the jellyfish and how that made her look, and just, it was a lot of work. To be honest, if I had somewhat of a different mindset, I might have given up on it, but I do find that almost impossible to do. It feels like I can't really move on if I haven't finished a big painting that I'm working on like this. Whether that's a good or bad philosophy, I'm not really sure. It does make me stick at things and see them through, which is good, but sometimes I do feel a little burnt out afterwards. I am certainly happy with the outcome of this piece, but it doesn't hit me the same as another artwork might. And to be honest, just every painting is different. You're not going to be obsessed with every artwork you do, and sometimes something will surprise you and be your favourite piece when you were just messing around from the beginning. Every piece teaches you something, and someone else might like it more than you do. Some of my favourite artworks from other artists are ones that they themselves don't even really like, so you know, you can never really tell what the purpose is with a painting. I just do like to stick at them. I don't feel like I can fully move on until it's done, so that's why this piece was finished, but it was a challenge. It did feel a bit more like work in the second half of the painting, and if someone else had given up on this same kind of piece, I certainly wouldn't blame them. It's always a journey and teaching you many things. This one, I believe, was teaching me not to bite off more than I can chew and make a painting too complicated when I don't have the energy to see it through. On a positive note, something I did have a lot of fun with here was playing with all the negative shapes in between our long tentacle shapes. Now, as much as I was trying to keep it somewhat realistic, like a background of course, I didn't mind the idea of having some abstraction and some of the negative shapes being a little different than the others, darker or lighter. And it's just always fun to make these negative shapes really dark and make the foreground pop. It does bring me a lot of satisfaction, especially those little circles I'm doing up there between the top of the jellyfish tentacle areas. I do find that sort of thing very satisfying. The colours in this piece I think threw me a bit because I wanted it to be very harmonious, mostly blues and pinks, but it started to just look a little too flat with the same colours over and over again. So it was only once I started to bring in a little bit more reddy browns into the background, adding some variations and pushing some elements back a bit, that I started to see a positive change in the colours. Another thing that really helped me elevate my painting and the colours a lot was opening up some more inspiration when I felt stuck, which was the wonderful Brian Froud and his fairies. He's a huge inspiration of mine, and I was really trying to lean towards these more glowy colours in this piece, so when I found some paintings with some colour palettes very similar to my own, I became newly inspired and took inspiration a lot from his colours and where he put his darkest values and his lightest, and just how it all worked together, so I had them sitting there from then on as inspiration and guidance to see the piece through. And it was at this point here, newly inspired by the hair colour of this fairy right here, that I decided to push it even darker. The hair was just throwing me off for the most of this. It just felt a bit too red. I needed it a bit more purpley blue. And I wasn't really sure about the tone. I felt that it either needed to be a lot lighter than the background or a lot darker than her skin. So I decided to go darker, and I certainly felt it improved after this. At this point, I went in with some more ink around the edges. I felt I needed a bit more definition. There are some areas that I wish I hadn't gone on so heavy, maybe around her fingers and the bottom of her tail. But I tried not to take it on too hard because I always know I can edit this a little bit out when I make a digital version of my art. And here's just a little look at my palette situation and some sped up color mixing. I pretty much never wash this thing. As you can see, I'm just going in and mixing around and using colors that are there to make new colors. And that concludes the painting section of the video. Now I'm just going to go in with some colored pencils to add a little more color depth and sharpness to finish it all off. And I'm just adding a little bit of this pinky glow around the jellyfish and a little bit around the mermaid skin and tail. And I've been going around and sharpening up some of the white lines of the tentacles. Bringing in a little more color variation, like some pinks on the skin, some blues of the background, sharpening up a few of the edges, cooling down some of the shadows. Very small adjustments, but I find they help tie it together. I'm not very well versed in colored pencils. I think sometimes I try and stay a little bit too far in the middle. Instead of just leaving it at watercolor or going in heavier with some of the pencils, I try and just do a little bit of light pencils. And sometimes it just feels a little non-committal. I think I just need to practice them more so I can use them more effectively in my art. And here's our finished painting. I do think she turned out quite similar to how I imagined her. It was just a lot more work to get there than I thought there would be. I am proud of myself for sticking at it and finishing the painting fully, but I am also very much looking forward to other projects now. I am glad that I really went with the jellyfish theme, and that is very clear from the image. There are a lot of long, flowy, lanky shapes that I really love, and it is quite sparkly after all. Prints of this piece will be going to the shop very soon, and I hope you have a wonderful few weeks until I talk to you again. Goodbye.